Hey guys, if you like my videos, please like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it, thanks. And also let me know where y'all are watching from and at what time. I'm curious. I've never run faster in my life. Branches whipped my face, tearing through skin, but I barely felt it. Adrenaline made me numb to everything but the frantic rhythm of my heart. The flashlight beam danced chaotically ahead, useless against the darkness swallowing me whole. Behind me the forest roared, branches snapping, leaves exploding into showers of green. Roots clawed at my boots, and the earth shifted underfoot as if alive, desperate to drag me down. "Keep running," I whispered fiercely, though there was no one left but me. 2 days ago I'd arrived at the logging camp to investigate the disappearance of an entire crew, experienced men who knew these woods better than most. But what I'd found at the outpost was something I'd carry to the grave. Tents ripped apart, cooking pots still bubbling, meals half-eaten, boots scattered like children's toys, and the claw marks, deep savage gouges in the trees, splintered wood weeping fresh sap. I should have left immediately, called for backup, but something drew me deeper, a whispering curiosity, an instinct to uncover secrets best left alone. Tonight I'd made the mistake of camping near the twisted pines that the loggers had warned each other about in their journals. I'd dismissed their scrawled warnings as superstition, mere folklore bred from isolation and darkness, until the roots came alive. I'd been fast asleep, dreams murky and restless, when the tent shifted. I woke instantly, rolled out just as roots stabbed upward, piercing through fabric, thrashing like snakes. Scrambling free, I watched in horror as my tent was torn apart, shredded by twisting branches, each motion accompanied by sickening groans from deep beneath the earth. That was the moment I knew. The forest itself had turned against us. Now, lunging forward blindly, I heard movement ahead, something small, swift, darting across my path. My flashlight caught it for a moment, a pale shape, lithe and ghostly, vanishing like smoke between trunks. "No!" I gasped. "Not now. Not here." The trees shuddered, pressing tighter. I ducked, dodged, and stumbled out onto a small clearing bathed in silver moonlight. Panting, lungs burning, I turned slowly, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. Shadows gathered at the clearing's edge, forms slender and unnatural, waiting just beyond sight. "You want me?" I shouted hoarsely. "Come on!" And just like that, the forest went still, unnaturally, terrifyingly still. Morning broke slowly over black pine forest, pale sunlight slicing reluctantly through heavy branches, as if the woods themselves resisted illumination. I stood shivering at the edge of the clearing, my clothes damp and shredded from last night's frantic escape. Somehow, impossibly, I'd survived. But survival wasn't enough. I still had a job to do. Returning cautiously to the ruined logging camp, my stomach churned at the sight. Torn canvas flapped weakly in the breeze, revealing the empty skeletons of tents. Breakfast plates were untouched, bacon congealed in grease, eggs hardened into sickening yellow crusts. It was as though every man here had simply stopped existing mid-meal, except for one. I found him curled inside a supply shed, eyes wide and staring, mouth frozen open in a final scream. Or perhaps he'd been pleading. It was hard to tell. His face was ghostly pale, and his fingers, gripping a rusted axe, were rigid with rigor mortis. I knelt, gently closing those accusing eyes. "You saw something," I whispered. "Something nobody should see." Outside again, my gaze drifted to the massive logs stacked nearby, freshly cut. Their dark rings caught my attention. Oddly twisted patterns that seemed almost human, faces etched into the grain, distorted in expressions of anguish. The more I stared, the clearer they became, eyes, noses, open mouths, frozen in silent torment. I recoiled, nausea rising sharply. I'd seen forestry anomalies before, strange shapes and grain, but nothing like this. This was deliberate, cruel. It felt like a message. A distant rustle snapped me from my thoughts, adrenaline surging instantly. I whipped around, scanning the trees. The woods watched silently, motionless yet charged with menace. Taking a breath, I forced myself into action. I documented everything meticulously, photographs, notes, descriptions detailed enough that even skeptics couldn't dismiss them. But skepticism was the least of my worries now. I had to convince anyone of what had happened here. As I worked, an uneasy sensation settled into my bones, a constant watchful pressure from just beyond my vision. Every creak of the trees, every whispering leaf seemed to mock my presence, challenging my sanity. Maybe it was just isolation playing tricks. But deep down, I knew better. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't just leave. Some force in the woods must have been affecting my mind, not letting me even think about leaving. When dusk crept in again, I prepared myself. Tonight I wouldn't sleep. Not here, not again. I'd stay vigilant, ready. But as the moon rose, soft laughter echoed quietly among the trees, shattering my resolve. I jerked awake, realizing with gut-wrenching dread that I had fallen asleep despite my best efforts. Darkness wrapped thickly around me, moonlight barely reaching through the dense canopy. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Then I noticed it, the tent fabric bulging inward, silently straining as though pressed by invisible hands. My pulse raced, hammering relentlessly in my chest. Without a sound, I slipped my hand toward my knife, lying just inches from me. A sudden cracking noise pierced the silence. I turned quickly, knife clutched tight, eyes wide. The ground itself seemed to ripple beneath me. Roots had snaked inside the tent, probing blindly, curling gently around my boots. Panic surged through my veins, raw and primal. "No!" I shouted, slashing at the invasive tendrils. Thick sap spilled from the wounds, dark as blood. The roots recoiled briefly, writhing like injured serpents, then surged forward again with renewed aggression. I clawed desperately at the tent flap, stumbling free into the open. Outside, the moon illuminated a nightmare. The trees had moved, impossibly. They'd shifted, now standing closer, circling like silent predators. The air was thick with a heavy scent of decay, sweet and cloying. I staggered backward, breathing shallowly, eyes darting from tree to tree. Then, abruptly, I froze. A silhouette stood among the trees ahead, barely visible, yet unmistakably human in shape. My voice cracked when I called out, "Hey, help me!" But the figure remained perfectly still, unnaturally poised. Slowly, horribly, it leaned forward, revealing itself fully in the moonlight. I stumbled back, horrified beyond words. It was a man, or had once been a logger. His torso fused grotesquely into the trunk of a tree. His skin stretched taut, bark encroaching over limbs and face, merging flesh with wood. Eyes stared blankly, wide with a silent plea. His mouth moved weakly, soundlessly mouthing words I desperately strained to understand. "They're angry," he finally rasped, each word forced painfully through stiffened lips. "We woke them. We cut them." I shook my head violently, disbelief warring with revulsion. "Who? What woke?" "The fairies," he wheezed, face contorting. "They sleep inside the trees. We cut them open, killed them. Now, punishment." His voice faded into choking silence, eyes rolling back as his form twisted further into the tree, disappearing beneath layers of thickening bark. In seconds, the logger was entirely consumed, leaving only a faint outline of agony etched upon the tree trunk. I stumbled away, horrified, into the waiting darkness, aware now that the forest itself hungered for vengeance. Morning found me huddled beside a cold campfire, my knuckles raw from clutching the knife through restless, watchful hours. The forest was quiet now, deceptively peaceful, sunlight filtering gently through swaying branches. It was hard to believe the horror of last night was anything more than a fevered dream. But the bruises, cuts, and twisted remains of my tent spoke an undeniable truth. I forced myself to move, desperate to stay ahead of creeping madness. Wandering deeper into the woods, I soon stumbled upon something curious, ancient carvings etched into thick pines, nearly hidden beneath moss and age. Kneeling, I brushed them clear, studying intricate lines depicting small humanoid shapes emerging gracefully from the trunks. Fairies. The native tribes of this region had legends, stories passed down over generations, cautionary tales to respect the spirits within these woods. Fairy tales, I whispered bitterly, shaking my head. But now, standing amid their ancient sanctum, skepticism felt foolish. Nearby, partially concealed by ferns, lay an abandoned rucksack. Inside, I discovered notebooks belonging to one of the loggers. Flipping hastily through smudged pages, my pulse quickened. At first, entries were normal. Reports on trees felled, weather conditions, mundane logging operations. Gradually, however, the tone shifted. The crew described strange dreams, visions of luminous beings whispering kindly at first, promising peace and riches. But soon the dreams darkened into relentless nightmares, images of endless woods filled with faceless shapes. One entry stood out sharply. "We cut into a giant pine today, God," the screaming when the chainsaw bit through. I swear, there was blood mixed with sap. Nobody wants to admit it, but something's horribly wrong here. They're angry. We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't have woken them. My fingers trembled as I closed the book, heart heavy with dread. The loggers hadn't simply vanished. They'd been taken, punished for desecrating this sacred place. And now, trapped here myself, I realized grimly that I was next. A sudden rustle nearby snapped me alert. Instinctively, I spun, blade raised. Nothing but empty forest greeted me, yet the presence was unmistakable, eyes watching, unseen mouths smiling softly from shadows, savoring my fear. I backed away carefully, heart hammering. This forest had a heartbeat, a consciousness ancient and furious, and I'd trespassed too far. As the day faded swiftly into dusk, I knew escape wasn't guaranteed, not anymore. Black Pine Forest had claimed me, and now it meant to keep me. Darkness fell thick and oppressive, an unwelcome guest settling in for another long night. Every noise, every shifting branch made my nerves twist tighter, stretched thin as wires. I kept moving, desperate to avoid the fate I'd seen befall the logger. Sleep was impossible now, a luxury I could no longer afford. Suddenly ahead, through a curtain of hanging moss, something shimmered softly. Drawn forward despite myself, I parted the greenery and stepped into a small grove illuminated faintly by moonlight. At its center stood a massive ancient pine, gnarled and twisted. Its bark glistened oddly, dripping slow, thick sap that pooled darkly at its base. My stomach churned violently as the smell hit me, a nauseating sweetness mingled with decay. Stepping closer, eyes adjusting slowly, I saw them clearly. Faces, dozens of faces, carved grotesquely into the trunk. Each expression was frozen in silent agony, mouths open as though screaming endlessly. I realized with a sickening twist that these were the missing loggers. Every man fused into the tree, their bodies swallowed, absorbed, reduced now to tormented visages embedded forever in wood. A ragged sob escaped my throat, involuntary, raw. Movement flickered at the edge of my vision. I spun swiftly, gripping my knife in trembling hands. Small shapes, delicate and ethereal, drifted toward me through shadows, beautiful at first, with eyes wide and innocent. But as they came closer, their forms warped, twisting hideously into grotesque mockeries of humanity. Their gentle smiles curled into snarls, teeth sharp, eyes burning with furious hatred. Fairies, angry, vengeful fairies. "You took our kin," one hissed softly, its voice resonating eerily through my bones. "You destroyed our home." "I didn't know," I gasped desperately. "Please let me go." Their laughter rose cold and mocking. Neither did they. With horrifying speed, they lunged, fingers elongating into claws, eyes blazing crimson. I stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding grasping talons that tore through air, inches from my face. Panic took control. I bolted from the grove, blindly sprinting through dense underbrush, branches slicing mercilessly at my exposed skin. Behind me, shrill cries pierced the night, creatures shrieking with rage, roots and branches tearing the earth in pursuit. But fear lent me unnatural speed, desperation overriding pain. Yet even as I ran, one dreadful thought echoed relentlessly in my mind. The faces in that tree, those tortured souls. I joined them soon enough unless I escaped this nightmare. And deep down, I feared escape was no longer possible. I ran until my lungs felt shredded, gasping breaths coming in ragged, painful bursts. Only when the forest fell quiet again, silent enough to send chills down my spine, did I dare slow to a trembling halt. My limbs shook uncontrollably, knees buckling beneath me as I sank to the damp ground. The fairies were quiet now, but I felt them watching. The trees themselves pulsed with an eerie awareness, alive with a simmering fury. I knew instinctively that the woods were letting me rest, playing with me, enjoying my slow descent into madness. A rustling noise, subtle yet deliberate, drew my attention. I glanced sharply toward a fallen log, decaying softly into the earth. My blood turned cold as a face slowly emerged from within the rings of wood. Eyes hollow, features distorted in agony. The mouth opened, moving soundlessly, pleading words I couldn't hear. "No more," I whispered, barely recognizing my own cracked voice. But now that I'd seen one, I saw more everywhere I turned. Faces forming silently in the bark of surrounding trees, hollow-eyed figures of pain, anger, despair. They watched me accusingly, each one a testament to horrors committed unknowingly by human hands. "I didn't do this," I whispered frantically. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." The forest offered no forgiveness. The expressions remained tortured, unmoved. Despair pressed heavy upon my shoulders, a crushing weight. How had it come to this? I'd walked into these woods thinking I understood nature, the ways of trees and earth. But now my ignorance mocked me from every shadow, every twisted trunk. As the moon rose high, faintly illuminating my nightmare, the trees began subtly shifting again, their great branches creaking as they leaned closer. Roots stretched forth inch by inch, curling menacingly toward me. Fear galvanized me. I stumbled upward, lurching forward, my only thought survival. But no matter how quickly I moved, the woods around me shifted, reshaped themselves, herding me steadily deeper into their heart. Then ahead, impossibly, I saw a light, soft and gentle, flickering warmly through the trees. Hope surged foolishly in my chest. Perhaps someone else had come looking, another investigator or ranger. Perhaps I wasn't alone. Ignoring caution, desperate beyond reason, I sprinted toward the glow. But even as I drew near, a dreadful certainty gripped me. This wasn't rescue. This was another trap, another cruel trick played by the forest. Yet what choice did I have? Gathering what little strength remained, I stepped into the glow. I stumbled into the clearing, blinded momentarily by the soft, shimmering light. My relief turned swiftly to horror as the source revealed itself. Not lantern or campfire, but dozens of fairies hovering silently, glowing softly in midair. Beautiful, delicate, yet their eyes were dark, voids swirling with anger and grief. Slowly they descended, encircling me like predators, sizing up wounded prey. I spun desperately, knife trembling uselessly in my hand. Every escape route vanished behind a wall of luminous creatures. "You came here to punish us again?" one asked gently, voice resonant yet chilling. Her delicate face was sorrowful, ancient eyes wet with grief. I didn't know," I stammered weakly. "We didn't know you were here." "You humans never do," another fairy spat bitterly, features twisting into something monstrous, claws extending viciously from fragile fingertips. "Always you take without asking, always you wound without thought." Others began transforming similarly, shifting from ethereal beauty to nightmarish forms, limbs stretching grotesquely, skin turning bark-like, teeth sharpening cruelly. I recoiled instinctively, heart thundering painfully against my ribs. "We've taken your friends," the first fairy said calmly, a sadness coloring her voice. "They will remain within the trees, forever a reminder." "Please," I pleaded desperately, dropping the knife and raising empty hands in surrender. "Let me go. Let me warn others never to disturb you again." The fairies paused, considering. Silence stretched agonizingly long. "You ask for mercy," the first fairy murmured finally, "yet your kind gave none." Suddenly, claws lashed forward, slicing through my jacket, grazing skin. I stumbled back, terror and adrenaline surging simultaneously. The fairies surged forward, attacking swiftly, their fury overwhelming. Pain exploded everywhere as talons ripped, teeth snapped, and bark-covered fists pummeled brutally. Blindly, wildly, I fought back, stumbling through gaps in their circle, sprinting through the forest. Behind, the air filled with enraged cries, shrieks promising vengeance. Bloodied, battered, I raced forward, driven purely by primal fear. But my foot caught on a root, and I crashed violently to the ground, wind driven from my lungs. Gasping desperately, I looked up to see fairies gathering overhead, eyes glinting murderously, claws poised to strike. In that instant, clarity cut sharply through panic. They wanted punishment, justice for their fallen kin. But perhaps mercy even now could reach them. "I'm sorry," I whispered with genuine grief, awaiting their strike. Instead, the lead fairy hesitated, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. With shocking gentleness, she touched my cheek. "Then carry our message," she whispered coldly. "Warn them." They withdrew slowly, luminous forms receding into shadow, the forest falling eerily silent again. My breathing was ragged, my body bruised and battered. For a long moment I remained on the ground, heart pounding, unable to believe they'd spared me. Finally, mustering strength, I staggered upright, glancing around fearfully. They'd vanished completely, leaving me alone but far from safe. A single path had opened through the trees, moonlight illuminating the way forward as if guiding me deliberately toward escape. I took a hesitant step, wary it might vanish, but the route remained clear. The fairies had granted me passage, not for mercy, I knew, but with grim purpose. I was their messenger now, their warning to the rest of humanity. The knowledge weighed heavily upon me. As I moved slowly along the path, shadows stirred softly, whispering faintly from the trees. Faces appeared subtly in the bark, watching silently, etched in eternal pain. Their eyes accused me, pleaded with me, demanded I never forget their suffering. "I won't," I promised quietly, voice thick with sorrow. The fairy's voice echoed faintly through the woods behind me, gentle but firm. "Tell your kind never to return. Tell them what happens beneath the black pines." With each step, the forest around me loosened its grasp slightly. Branches retreated, roots slid back beneath the soil. But the trees still groaned mournfully, trembling with suppressed anger, unwilling to fully release their prey. I felt eyes following me, thousands of hidden gazes, each wary, each hateful. Eventually, after what felt like an eternity, I glimpsed the boundary of black pine forest. Dawn's weak light seeped through thinning trees, revealing a dirt road and my parked truck beyond. Relief surged, mingled bitterly with grief and guilt. As I crossed the invisible boundary, the air shifted abruptly, cleaner, lighter, less oppressive. I turned slowly, facing the dark mass of trees. Figures hovered silently at the tree line, fairies watching coldly, ensuring their warning was heeded. "I'll tell them," I whispered again, throat tight. "I promise." One fairy stepped slightly forward, beautiful yet terrifying, eyes glowing softly. She smiled sadly, shaking her head. "You humans always promise, yet always you forget." Then quietly the fairies dissolved into shadows, leaving only the echo of their final warning lingering bitterly in my heart. Trembling, exhausted beyond reason, I stumbled toward my truck, knowing the burden I carried would forever haunt me, knowing the forest's vengeance would be swift and merciless should humanity ever dare return beneath the black pines. I drove blindly, tires spinning on gravel, the engine roaring as I fled from black pine forest. My hands trembled violently on the wheel, blood streaking the upholstery from cuts I barely felt. My mind reeled, spinning with memories I'd never shake. The faces trapped in bark, those vengeful fairies, the terrible price of human ignorance. The radio crackled uselessly, static, drowning any hope of calling for help. I didn't dare look back, yet I felt them watching still, silently urging me forward. It seemed as if the woods themselves stretched behind me, extending their shadowy fingers, unwilling to let go completely. After an eternity, headlights appeared ahead, slicing through lingering fog. Relief surged so violently I nearly sobbed, gripping the wheel tighter. An approaching patrol car slowed, lights flashing gently. I slammed the brakes, gravel spraying wildly, jumping out before the car fully stopped. The officer stepped forward cautiously, confusion etched across his weathered face. "Hey," I gasped desperately. "There's been an attack. In the logging camp. The crew's gone, dead or worse. Something's out there." He eyed my torn clothes, bloody face, wild eyes. Skepticism colored his expression. "What attacked them?" I hesitated, desperation battling reason. "Fairies," I whispered, finally, voice trembling. "The trees. Fairies living inside. They killed the crew for cutting the trees." His eyes hardened slightly, jaw setting. "Son, have you been taking something?" "No," I shouted frantically. "Listen to me. You have to stay away from there. It's dangerous. It's angry. He placed a hand gently but firmly on my shoulder. Calm down. We'll get you some help. I glanced back at Black Pine Forest, shivering. Figures hovered faintly among the shadows, watching, waiting, their eyes cold and patient. Days blurred together afterward. Doctors poked and prodded, whispering quiet diagnoses. Detectives asked gentle but persistent questions, eyebrows raised skeptically as I recounted fairies, vengeful trees, and loggers trapped in bark. Eventually, they stopped pretending to believe me. My story was labeled psychosis, brought on by trauma and isolation, a convenient label to erase uncomfortable truths. My supervisors visited once, awkwardly polite, their eyes pitying and distant. I saw my dismissal clearly written on their faces. Career finished, credibility shattered. Soon after, doctors signed papers, and they took me somewhere quiet, sterile, with locked doors and white walls, an institution where my delusions could be treated and safely ignored. But even now, locked within these walls, I know what waits beyond human sight, lingering beneath the black pines, and I know deep in my bones they haven't forgotten me. I whisper to myself, the same words over and over. Don't cut the trees, don't wake them, they're still inside. But no one hears me, not yet, and when they do, it'll be far too late.